Good morning, y'all. Hope everybody's doing well. I wanted to go over a couple of things just for the syllabus. I know um, y'all had a little bit to look over it, just to kind of reiterate things that need to be turned in, what doesn't. So each week you're going to be given a part one, part two. You can think of part one as being the review. The guided practice, that includes the notes, do not need to be turned in. Item two, the independent practice, are going to be things that you need to be turned in. If you want, you can turn it. If you have the paper copy, you can turn in the paper copy. If you have the digital document, you can just write on it and send it to me. There is also a form that you can fill out in Google Classroom as well. It might be a quiz that week. It might be a Google form. So just pay attention to the links that are at the below the syllabus that is attached to the Google assignment. There are also blank copy of the notes if you would like to follow along as I'm going through them now. So again, then in part two, the only thing that needs to be turned in is going to be the independent practice and the mastery check. So there are 3 things that need to be turned in each week. 1 from part 1 and 2 from part 2. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get started on the notes. And then we'll get going on the practice as well. And if there's any questions, I'll answer those, and then if not, I will, you can wait and ask questions if you happen to be watching this later and you have questions. I will be streaming on Friday as well, and you can come in during those streams to ask questions if you need help. And I know you already have the key. Some were asking to go through it. Seems to help a little bit, so let's see if that does. So with a scatter plot you might have seen last year when you were going over histograms and bar graphs and line graphs, and scatter plots are going to be a graph of plotted points that show the relationship between 2 sets of data. And then we're also going to be going into a trend line, which we're getting a little ahead because we're going to be doing that technically next week, but I went ahead and introduced it this week as well because they kind of go hand in hand. A trend line is going to be a line on a graph showing the general direction that a group of points seem to follow. That's just going to be an approximation for this year. You're going to just try to get the best trend line that you can, and we will be doing some practice with that as well. But there'll be more of that practice next week. The big thing you need to know for this week is just what type of trends are you looking at. So, for example, on the first one underneath, we have a trend that is, as you're moving to the right, it's going up. And if we think about that from our linear and our slope, our linear equations, so our slope intercept equations, as we go up, as we move right, what type of slope is that? That was a positive slope. So if you have a trend that as it goes up, as the more you So as your horizontal increases, your y, your vertical increases. That is also going to be a positive trend. So it looks just like a positive slope. A positive trend will have a positive slope. So as one set of the values increases, the other set tends to increase. And then the inverse of that is going to be, and that is positive. I don't know why that came out so well. Try it one more time. So the inverse of that then is going to be a negative trend. I don't know why it's not. Handwriting's not working today. As one set of the values increases, the other set tends to decrease. So as we move right, as our x values increase, our y's tend to decrease. And then the last one that we're looking at is kind of like where there are points all over the place, so there's no real trend whatsoever, and hence the name of this. We're just going to label that as no trend. Or now, with each one of these, you may also see another word instead of positive trend, negative trend, and no trend. You may also hear correlation. So trend, you may also hear correlation. Correlation. All right, so if we were to make a scatter plot, they're going to be giving you a set of points, and then you just have to plot them. So our first column, we should remember, again, from slope or functions as well, is our x, our input, and then the second column is our y, it's our output. So I'm going to plot these points. So 5 and 150, so 5, and then 150. So this is 140, 150, 160, 170. So 150 is going to be right here. And let me just increase, let's use this so we can increase. Might be too much, let's see. Let's use that. Okay, so 5, 150. Then we're going to have 4 and 112. And with this one, we're going to have to kind of just guesstimate. So here's 120, here's 110. 112 is close to half, but not quite, just a little bit underneath, kind of closer to 110, so I'm going to mark that there. So we got this done, this done. Now let's try 7 and 217. So 7 along the x, and then all the way up to 217. So again, this is 210, 220, 217 is going to be kind of a little more than half, closer to 220, so I'm going to plot that there. Now we're going to do 3 and 87, so we're going to go to 3 and 87, again, just a little bit above half. And then we're going to go to 8 and 216, so 8, 216 is going to be kind of close to where we were at the 217 mark, so put it kind of right there. And then 5 and 155, so 5, 150, 155, something along like that. And what they wanted us to fill in here, they wanted us to label the axes. They already labeled it for us, but if we needed to label these axes, then we would use what's at top of the graph. So they said we would use the horizontal scale to show the amount of gas, or the gallons of gas, amount of gas. And we're going to use the vertical scale to represent the number of miles. So I'm going to use a little hashtag, pound symbol, to represent some number of miles. And more specifically, the number of miles traveled. Why is the... Alright, and then we plotted, we've already plotted all the data for that, so that's what the scatter plot would look like. So now, this is what we're going to get into next week, but then they wanted us to draw trend lines. So trend lines are going to be showing how exactly does how exactly do the points correlate, and what type of equation can we use to kind of somewhat predict what an amount would be. So the first thing you need to do is you need to determine whether or not is the graph a positive or negative, or is there a trend at all. So if we look at the graph at these points, they're kind of going, so as our x values increase, our y values are increasing. So what type of trend is that? Well, if one goes up and the other one goes up, then it means that, and this kind of looks like the same thing as our slope, that slope is going to be positive, so that's a positive trend. So determining the type of trend, the plotted points go up from the left to the right, and the scatter plot then shows a positive trend. So then they would want us to draw a line with a positive slope to make sure that there's about as many points above the line as there is below it. And then they want us to find 170 on the y-axis, or the vertical axis. So I'm just going to make this the y-axis, but that would be the vertical axis. And then move to the right to find out where it is on the horizontal axis. Now let's try to plot this. Now doing this is going to be a little tricky on the computer, and I did do it for key to the notes. Let's see if I can try to do that again. So this may not be the exact, was the last one, but so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points, and some of the points your line may go through it, so it's a best guess for this. You don't want a trend line that kind of goes up like this, that none of the points then are near that line. You don't want to go in the opposite direction because that's not showing the trend. You don't want to go straight up, horizontal. You don't want it too shallow. You don't want to start the line here and go here. So lines that are incorrect, let's use that in red. So these are incorrect. So incorrect for red. So lines that are in red just equals incorrect. So you don't want something like this, that wouldn't be right. You don't want something too steep, so that wouldn't be right. You don't want anything going in the opposite direction, so that wouldn't be right. You want something that represents the data appropriately, so this is going to be our correct. So like I said, I'm going to try my best to get a straight line. It's a little difficult with the let's see if this is going to work. Oh, I have to do this again. Yep, do that again. Try to be as precise as possible, but I don't know if we're going to get it super precise when I'm on the computer using the mouse, so we'll so something like that. This line right here would be the best. Again, I'm sorry it's not super straight for that, but that would be, erase all the red, so that would be good. something like that. So you may go through 1 or 2 points, or maybe a few points. If there was more data to be more accurate, you could have something like this. I'm just adding points at this point, but if you had more points, this would be what the trend line would look like. And then you may be given an outlier, so something that's way out there that doesn't make sense for the graph may occur. So if we were to guesstimate with the 170, it's about 5, if a little close to 6. I think I put 6 on the note, so we'll stick with 6 just with that. I know the trend line's a little off for where it was before, so but it's about 6 gallons. We're to round up to the nearest gallon. You could even say 5.5. About. And then they wanted us to graph another one. I am going to skip this one only because they didn't give us lines really well for this, so to check that. Let's see, we got 1 to 15. We could draw that over here. Let's try to do that. Okay, so we have age and sleep time. So we have our X and our Y. So X is going to be the top. So we have and what's our highest Y? Highest Y is 15. So starting at 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And then our largest X is going to be 20. So we're going to like 25. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, and then we're going to plot, so 1, 15, so 1, and then 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Boom. And I should have labeled, so this is going to be sleep time. This is going to be in hours, and this is going to be age. So we plotted 1, 15, now at 15, they're going to sleep about 8.5, so we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's mark these so I can go back and I don't have to count each time. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 23, 24, 25, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'll stop there. Okay. So 15 and then 8.5. So 5, 6, 7, 8.5. Then we're going to have 6 and 9.5, so 6, and then 9.5, so 6. Here's 10, go down half. 19 and 7, 19, and then here's 5, 6, 7. 12 and 9.25, so 12. 9.25 is about there. 3 and 12. 3, 12. 5 and 11. 13.9. 20 and 7. 5, 6, 7. And then the last one's 6 and 9.75. So 6 again and 9.75. So we got another one. It's going to be kind of a little bit down there, but it's kind of cramped together. So what type of trend is this? So this is a negative trend. You may also hear that as a negative correlation, right? And we're going to now go ahead and I need to move this so you can see this more. Now that I get that plotted, I'm going to go ahead and move that data out of the way because now they just want us to draw the trend line. Again, I'm going to try my best with this. We're going to draw that trend line with let's draw it in this color. Okay, so we want where they're about half above, half below, but it kind of, you can kind of see it, it kind of goes down like even a little bit more shallow. This might be a little bit of an outlier, so something like that. Something like that looks good. Something along those lines. It might be a little bit more steep up it that way. The problem, I would say, with this, though, is that at some point you need to have a certain amount of sleep, so it's never going to go completely down to 0. So even this wouldn't be completely accurate. Because at some point, I mean, this is telling us at some point then, the older we get, we're eventually going to get no sleep. Which is completely wrong, but in the data that they had here, we could say there's a negative trend. We can assume we have a trend line. This is somewhat accurate of a trend line. Because of this data up here, it could be, like I said, a little bit steeper, so it could have come down more like starting here and coming down like, I guess like just a little bit more. So something along those lines, right, like that. But again, you do not want to be having trend lines. We'll make this as the no. You don't want to have a trend line that goes like this, that's well below it, well above it, in the opposite, as an opposite correlation. So you're saying it's positive when really the data is showing a negative correlation. So just this year, they're going to give you ones that you can clearly tell the type of correlation and you can clearly see where the trend line is going to be at. So it's more of a process of elimination that you'll have to deal with. And then with the guided practice, I felt like I'd go over at least the top few before I let y'all go. And then that way, if there's any questions, you can email me. So again, for this week, we just needed to know whether or not it's a positive, negative, or no correlation. Like I said, correlation, you can think of that as trend. So I'm going to write that right above. So correlation, you can also think of that as trend. So if we're looking at this first set of data, is the data really going anywhere? It's kind of all over the place, so I would say this is a no correlation or no trend. With this one, it's going down as we increase. So as one of our data sets is increasing, our other data set is decreasing, so this is negative. It's a somewhat like a strong negative, not quite super strong. This would be much stronger negative correlation. The more tighter knit the data points are, the more that it develops into a line, the stronger the correlation. So this is a somewhat negative correlation, and this is a positive correlation, which as you see, positive. So as this increases, as we get more positive, our y's get more positive, so positive slope, positive correlation. So just knowing what we just looked at there, so what would this one be? Since it's going more positive, up to get more positive, then it would be positive. As we get more positive, get more negative. That was a terrible arrow. More negative. So then it's a negative slope or negative correlation, negative trend. This one's kind of all over the place. It makes a shape, but it's not what we want. So this is no trend or no correlation. All right. And then the last one, I just wanted to have us plot. So this one is hours slept, which is their test score. They've already labeled it. And they just wanted us to see. Just wanted us to plot it. So to plot, or you're going to do your x, your y. So think of every spot as an ordered pair, x, y. So we have our x, our y. So if it was to plot 883, 883, 786, 786, 774, 774, 888, 8, 676, 676, 563. That's probably more down here, but that's okay. 563, 790, 460, 989, and then 781. So what type of slope does that, or I'm sorry, what type of trend does that show? Well, as your number of hours of sleep increased, our test score, as this increased, our test scores increased. So as sleep went up, that increased our test score. Test score went up. So what type of trend does that show? That shows a positive correlation or positive trend correlation. All right, so hopefully that helped. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. And I will talk to y'all later. Hope you're doing well. I miss y'all, and talk to you soon.